Welcome to the Golden Shadow. My name is Alyssa Polizzi.
And I'm Aaron Rogerson.
I recently got back from a 3-day backpacking trip in Yosemite National Park. That's here in California. And this is backpacking in the backcountry where you're immersed in the wilderness. So no amenities like filtered water, safe places to sleep, prepared food to eat, and the experience of being in the wild, meeting Mother Nature in her fullness. It's exhilarating, it's powerful, but it's also really humbling and overwhelming at times. Sometimes it really feels like you're straddling this line between, and this might sound kind of exaggerated, but life and death, like danger and being intensely alive. There's really nothing quite like it, at least that I've experienced.
Being outside, being in the wilderness is a hobby of mine and Alyssa's, and it's something that we've done together a lot in the last 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think even more so when we moved to Sedona during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Sedona, Arizona. Most of you are probably at least aware of what it's like, but it's a kind of a hiking mecca. Yeah. It's a really good trail system, really beautiful, lots and lots of things to explore on foot just throughout the city of Sedona itself, which is really interesting. But it is I wouldn't say a super serious hobby. Obviously, there's people who are more serious about backpacking in the outdoors than we are. But we try to get out whenever we can, even though it's been less since the baby was born.
Yeah, but before that, we were actually backpacking once a year in Yosemite, at least. And it was becoming a really great tradition. Then I got pregnant.
We were trying.
Yeah.
Backpacking is a lot of work, and it's a lot of suffering. A lot of prep goes into it. Mm-hmm. So it isn't something that we were able to really manage more than once a year, really, or every 6 months, maybe.
Yeah. And there's something, I think, particularly about backpacking in Yosemite, which turns up the extremeness. Because for me, I've probably backpacked maybe 8 times, so not a lot. And 4 of those times have been in Yosemite. And it's like, God, backpacking is really hard. It's never simple. It's always exhausting. And I think that's not quite true, because you can pick, treks that are much simpler. And Yosemite, if you've never been there, it's essentially like this incredible spot in the Sierras, but it's got tons of elevation gain. All of the hiking trails that you can do are always kind of big, steep ascents and very intense descents and moving up and down over mountain passes. And so it's quite an extreme act, where some of the backpacking that we did in Arizona was a little bit simpler. But even those presented itself with the sudden realization that you are no longer in power. And I think that's still even an illusion. But being in the city, being at home, having access to all of those resources, I don't think you quite begin to realize or even appreciate all that we have in modern life until you take yourself out of it. And that feeling of vulnerability and exposure is really terrifying. But at the same time, it's deeply embodying, very grounding. And it makes me feel more alive and more human than I think any other time in my life.
Yeah, I mean, to give the audience an idea of what we're talking about, if you're not familiar with backpacking as an activity, it's called backpacking because you have everything that you need on your back. You wear a big backpack. It's usually between 25 and 40 pounds, depending on how serious of a trip you're going on. But you pack up everything you need. You have food, and you have a water filter where you're actually getting all your water out of bodies of water, like rivers and lakes. And you need good shoes, and you have a sleeping pad. You have a sleeping bag. You might or might not have a tent that you sleep in. I prefer to not have a tent because they're heavy.
I prefer a tent.
Prefers to have a tent because she doesn't like creepy crawlies getting all over her. And I think people have a good idea what camping's like, but usually that involves being on trails and
and establish campsites.
Being able to take your car somewhere and park
Yeah.
it and then have all your stuff and take it out for you in a campsite. And, even camping is usually people think that's like pretty uncomfortable, but backpacking is way, way more extreme than that.
Yeah.
Because you get out into the wilderness and you have to find your own place to sleep. Like you have to pick up a spot on the ground. You have to find a good body of water nearby to drink from. And I mean, it can get even more extreme if you are somewhere where you're going there are no trails. You're just going into the wilderness. Like that can really give you the perspective that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like even trails are sort of like a luxury that people don't really think about very much. If you actually try to travel cross country, where you're just going through like thickets and trees and
basically.
like you're bushwhacking, it's really, really exhausting and messy and painful when you get scratched up and stuff like that. And it really makes you appreciate that the wilderness is a brutal place.
Yeah.
It's both beautiful and brutal at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in this episode, that's what we're going to explore a lot is that sort of duality of nature being this thing that is that you revere. Like it's a thing of reverence, but it's also something that you fear and something that can kill you.
Yeah.
So people, get lost in nature and they die very quickly.
Absolutely.
And in the city, we don't really even think about that. You go to a park and it's like, oh, this is nature. And it's like, no, it's not really. Like the park is kind of like a garden.
Yeah.
The real nature, if you get out in there, like it'll kill you very, very quickly if you're not prepared. And it still does to people all the time who either live out there in the wilderness or, are leaving the city to go explore. It's like people get lost and they die all the time. People go like rock climbing and get killed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So backpacking kind of, we're not doing anything that extreme, but it does bring you face to face with, I think, what, nature really is. And it's something that we forget about and don't need to think about quite so much if we live in the city.
Yeah, there's such a perspective shift that happens because, at least for us, we are city dwellers, and we're used to this life that's been constructed for us, essentially this safe haven from the wild, from wilderness, at least to as much of an extent as the city has its boundaries and its streets that are paved and it's clean water. You know what I mean? It's like we're still...
Oh, yeah, everything. You don't even think about it. I mean, if you're born in the city, you never leave it. You just sort of like, oh, yeah, water comes from the tap.
Yeah.
Food's in the grocery store.
Yeah.
The streets work. You can get on the street and go places. You can get in your car and drive wherever you need to go.
Yeah.
There's electricity.
Right.
There's heat.
Yeah.
There's AC if you need it. All these things can be taken for granted if you don't leave the city, but it's like those things are just like they're miracles of engineering.
Absolutely.
And you get outside and all those things become a problem. Usually you're backpacking someplace that's pretty plentiful in water.
Yeah.
But, a lot of places in the wilderness, like waters can be hard to find. You can die of exposure from heat or cold.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how...
Sudden storms.
Yeah. I mean, weather is something you need to really pay attention to when you're backpacking or climbing or anything like that. It's like storms can come through. There's like... Everest is an extreme version of this, but, the weather is real if you get into extreme nature and people go up on Everest and a storm rolls through and just kills like 20 people. There's like crazy stories like that. And so that's the reality of nature. And in the city, that reality is kind of wiped away.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. After a backpacking trip is over, one of the most intense moments is when you get back to your car and you start driving away. It's like, oh my God, like I don't have to walk anymore. My car, which moves at 20, 30, 50 miles an hour, suddenly I can get from point A to point B so quickly. It's like it puts so much into perspective. And I think that's why it's so important, at least for me, that to kind of get out of city life, to get back to this place where you meet nature in its intensity. It makes me, as I mentioned, it makes me appreciate what I have, but I think it also feels like it connects me to something much more ancient that I didn't know was there until I went back, or I went to the wild, I should say.
Right. And you were first exposed to that when you came to California in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. So you weren't doing it from, the moment you were born. This is something that you kind of came into
Yeah.
at sort of a later stage of childhood.
Yeah. Not super young, but not a lot older. I was raised in the boroughs of New York City. And so it's incredibly urban. And when we moved to California, and we started going out to national parks and going camping, I don't know, it was a revelation. I've been to the ocean a bunch, and I think you can have certain experiences that are similar to this by being out in the open water or being in
Yeah.
other
The ocean does it.
yeah.
I mean, you're not backpacking in the ocean, but I think people, when they go to the ocean, go to the beach, they experience that raw power.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's like so beautiful and kind of like terrifying and
Yeah.
overwhelming all at the same time.
Yeah. And I wrote about this in my Substack a couple of years ago when we were contemplating leaving Sedona, and how tough it was for me, because Sedona strikes a really beautiful balance between city life and access to resources. And yet it's woven into nature, unlike pretty much any city I think that I've ever been to. Like, there's a McDonald's, there's a grocery store, there's all of these things.
Yeah, you could walk from the McDonald's to like a world-class trail.
I know. Yeah, it's really
Which is
ridiculous.
strange.
There's thrift store shopping. There's all these cool things.
Yeah.
And then there are these incredible trails in every single direction. And it felt so good and so healthy and very balancing. And it was hard to leave that. It was hard to move away, but it was also very isolating. We don't have community there. And I think there is something about cities that are closer to nature, or like more in the countryside, that you're just not going to get quite the level of community experience unless your community is there. But
You can get both. I mean,
yeah,
it depends.
depends.
This is a whole different episode, but a lot of it's just about where you're from.
Yeah.
You don't move to Sedona and then recreate your entire community that you've had since childhood.
Right.
It's like it takes time. There's no way around that.
Yeah. But anyways, to go back to moving to California. Right. Why was I talking about this? Because I wrote this article on the Artemisian, and I started thinking back to the early experiences that I had when I moved to California, and we went camping and we went to Yosemite. And it really feel like it activated something very deep in me. It was like this romantic yearning for the wild, this yearning to live in the mountains and to have a home there, maybe to live there forever. I don't know. I was like 8 or 9 years old. I'm not sure where it was coming from, but something very deep in me knew that this was powerful. It, wanted to be immersed in it. And I don't think it ever left. And it's continued to kind of grow and unfold and deepen over time. And I think backpacking helps me get into it, to re-experience what that really deep, ancient, and what I would say is also very archetypal experience is like. And I think maybe a lot of people, even if they've never been to the wild or they don't yearn for it, they might be surprised if they were to go, to somewhere like a national park, or maybe even Sedona, and the kind of way it moves you, what it activates in you. Because I think that latent capacity to feel that depth and to feel that archetypal power is there, just waiting kind of to activate.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of your work is kind of based around this concept, because that's what the Artemisian is about, right? Artemis as a figure is sort of like a nature goddess.
Figure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this, even though you probably don't talk about this very explicitly,
Mm-hmm.
well, I mean, you have talked about it explicitly, but this is like a big part of like your, how would you say, like your philosophical realm or your aesthetic realm has a lot to do with nature. And you've based a lot of your work around this sort of this feeling, this theme of kind of being more at home in the wilderness than in the city, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't even think it was very intentional, but I think that it becomes a really natural expression when a lot of my interest surrounds the mysteries of the unconscious and the expressions of the unconscious and the archetypal systems and symbolic systems and psychological frameworks born from that, because the forest and the wilderness is a very powerful symbol or analog of the unconscious itself. So it's a really perfect pairing. And I think the aesthetic of the forest and the wilderness is a really natural match then for the work that I do.
Yeah, so you'll see, this is obvious, but you'll see a lot of stories, fairy tales, myths.
Yeah.
A lot of them have some sort of theme around the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them, but going into the woods.
Right. Yeah.
Some girl is on a journey and she has to go into the woods to fetch something or to get somewhere.
Yeah, tons of fairy tales always begin that way. You're entering into the dark forest.
There's even, more explicit stories are essentially about a kind of man versus wild or woman versus wild sort of struggle. That's kind of explicitly the point. The movie Castaway, for instance, was that's a man versus wild sort of story. So it's a very powerful, compelling theme. I mean, there's that, but there's also just the how do you say, the omnipresence of nature, just archetypically for humans makes sense, right? It's because that's where we evolved. That's where we were.
For sure.
Humans were born in the wilderness. All of our, our body, our mind, all of our instincts are kind of built around being in wilderness, in nature. It's only very recently, in the last, several centuries, that's become sort of secondary for a huge part of the world, just to not really have to deal with nature very much, not have to deal with survival in that way very much. Anyways, I digress. How would we sort of frame this as the sort of the into the woods theme? What is that getting at? I think you hinted upon it just now as sort of a journey into the unconscious.
Yeah, for sure. That's really typical, at least a Jungian interpretation, is that anytime we see a fairy tale or myth or dream where there is a adventuring into, a draw into, or you're being tasked to go into the forest, which is usually either shimmering with this enchanted sort of aura, or it's dark and creepy and it's the forest you don't want to enter. It's an expression of the unconscious. So those deep layers of the psyche that are always there and that which we were born from, and yet we were connected but disconnected to, and the tasks that we get to move into that space to explore it, and then how polarizing that can be, because the unconscious is generative. It creates the conditions where growth and evolution and healing can be found, and at the same time can be overwhelming, destructive. It can flood us. It can destroy, at least the ego structure. So it holds that kind of life-death principle within it. And so I think it's very natural then that the wilderness carries that too for us symbolically, right? Because you actually feel that on a deeply embodied level. When you go out into the wilderness, you feel how expansive it is. It can be very healing. It can totally restructure how you feel and how you're viewing your current life. And then in the next moment, something can happen and you realize that you are on this precipice of maybe destruction, and in a very small, and this is not an example of actual destruction, but on my recent trip, I had an old injury flare up, and it's funny because it's an injury from backpacking, and I got to my campsite on day one and was limping so badly where I was I don't know how I'm going to finish this trek. In fact, am I going to have to find a ranger, and are they going to have to get a helicopter and get me out? It's I go from, this is exhilarating, I'm having the time of my life, it's so beautiful, and boom, then I realize how vulnerable I am, how the elements act upon my body, and what I have and don't have at my disposal to be able to deal with that. And I think experience of the unconscious are like that too. Sudden overwhelm, sudden depression, sudden intensities that overwhelm you and cripple you. And how do you navigate that?
Yeah, the danger is part of the experience. I mean, you don't go backpacking. I mean, even just going out in nature at all, I think it's like you don't really enjoy nature without being sort of exposed to the danger of it.
Mm.
That's part of like what's so beautiful and powerful about it.
Yeah.
I mean, even adventures. I mean, you could say like archetypally adventures involve danger, or else they're not adventures.
Mm.
Like any story, any hero's journey, if it's like safe the entire time, it's like, well, that's not an adventure. That doesn't really compute as like being a real story. The same is true for going out into the wilderness, and especially if you're backpacking, it's like part of the experience is the danger of it. Like maybe the risk of it, obviously you can go too far in that direction and it stops being a good time and starts being something that feels really scary. That can happen. It does happen to people. I wouldn't say I've ever been in a situation that felt really scary, but I've accidentally gotten myself into situations out in nature where it's kind of like, ooh, this is like kind of sketchy, where it's like I've run out of water and there's no water sources anywhere nearby that I can find. And like, well, hopefully I make it back okay without any water. Stuff like that. But that is part of the experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is sort of, that ties into the symbol of the woods, is the journey into the unconscious is kind of dangerous. But no change happens without the danger.
Yeah.
You're not stretched or pushed or pulled without the danger.
Yeah, it's transformative. And I think it's transformative and powerful because it pushes you to the edge and it pushes you to those kind of boundaries. And I can feel like a minor version of it when I'm camping. It's like, oh man, it's so nice to be back. And, it's quiet, or I can just hear the birds singing and the sky is blue and I don't hear planes overhead and my phone is turned off. And but still I can get in my car and drive away and things are simpler and a little bit easier. And then there's these experiences where you are pushed or you meet like your edge, you meet your boundaries, and actually surviving it or realizing the kind of depth of power or capacity you have that you didn't know you had before it's deeply transformative.
What are some stories we can actually point out that explore these themes? So Vasilisa is a good one.
Vasilisa is a good one. I think it captures a lot of elements of the wilderness, that you have a heroine who is tasked to go into the dark forest. So there we go. She's moving into the wilderness. It's this place that is a little uncertain and causes a lot of fear and uncertainty, but she's also tasked to meet the Baba Yaga, who is this great mother figure. And I think, by the way, a wonderful accompaniment to this episode would be the one we did on the archetype of the mother, because great mother figures mythically also capture the wilderness and Mother Nature and her amorality and her life-giving and death-giving qualities to her. So Vasilisa has to go into the forest to meet the Baba Yaga and retrieve fire that's gone out in their home. And as she moves into the forest, she starts meeting these strange figures, the red horsemen, the white horsemen, the black horsemen that bring night and dawn and day. So she's meeting forces of nature who are actually under the Baba Yaga's control. She gets to her home. It's made out of bones and chicken legs, and it's basically like a graveyard, like a interestingly constructed graveyard. And the Baba Yaga is someone who, in many fairy tales, threatens to kill the hero and the heroine if they don't complete certain tasks, but also is willing to, gift the boon or provide the fire if they can live up to certain tasks that she gives to them. So there's this really, that Vasilisa, I think, really captures all of those dynamics really, really well. And her movement through it shows the evolution of both a individuating ego, so Vasilisa as this individuating impulse that has to meet these deep archetypal forces and overcome the challenge and learn her own intensity, build intuition, meet the great mother, reconcile things with the personal mother, all these dynamics. And so it's a really beautiful story that really goes deep into those things.
Yeah, so Golden Shadow is happening within that story, right?
Yeah.
So you go into the woods, you're going into the unconscious, you're kind of going into the shadow. dig things up. And so Baba Yaga having a house made of, skulls and chicken legs, it's kind of like the stuff of nightmares almost.
Sure.
It's like you're going into
sure.
the darkness.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, what happens when you like go into the shadow? It's like, well, it might like try to kill you, basically. That's why it's really scary. And you have this instinct to turn back and like leave the forest. Like, oh, I'm not going down there. There's like all these signs that say beware, stay out. But the golden shadow aspect is like, if you successfully complete the tasks given to you by the shadow, or if you go in there and you sort of follow the path of individuation, or digging up, those dark places and shining light upon them, you're granted this boon.
Yeah.
Right. And so it is interesting that it all ties together, sort of like going into the unconscious. It can grant you this boon to make you stronger, more individuated, more powerful, more wise.
Yeah.
Same thing is true as like literally going into the woods, going on to these trips, going camping, going backpacking. There can be sort of this feeling of just like, oh, this is kind of dangerous and scary.
Yeah.
And you might even find yourself in the middle of it being like, well, this sucks. I am suffering. I'm in a lot of pain. This is really hard. Or even like something's going wrong. I've ran out of water. Yeah. But if you can succeed and get out, it feels really like a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
It can feel very grounding. It can feel very healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the reasons at least for the literally being out in wilderness or going backpacking or something like this is that, it's an opportunity for you to ground back into your body.
Yeah.
Ground back into your more animalistic sort of primal self, which is built for being out in the wilderness and is built for physical activity and is built for like exploring, mapping the unknown, sort of carving your path through sort of like the wilderness of your own mind in certain ways. Mm-hmm. So, definitely an experience when you're going backpacking is that the ego has to take a backseat and has to sort of sit in this vacuum of like, where's my phone? Where's my screens? Where are my friends? Where's my TV? All these things that are just like the ego is like fully on all the time when we're in the city, when we're in our houses. And then you go outside in the wilderness and the ego has nothing to do anymore. It's almost just like, hello, give me a task. And you're just kind of like, you need to shut up right now. And the body instead wakes up.
Yeah.
All these survival instincts wake up and you actually start to feel really sort of like in your body, like just like all the feelies and sensations and the kind of adrenaline and the sort of like the focus. And that's why I can kind of feel like you're being on drugs.
Yeah. Altered states of consciousness because that typical ego perspective is shifting. And one thing that I notice about backpacking, and maybe this is true of any time you're pushing your body through some sort of extreme activity. I don't know, maybe you can talk more about that, Aaron, but one thing I notice when backpacking is I fall into these really interesting states where it's not just that, ego has to go away, but for example, if I'm trying to make, a big ascent up this mountainside and it's really tough and I'm already pretty worn out, I notice that I start counting. It's like all the thoughts fall away, all the considerations, and I'm just counting with each step. 1, 2, 3, 4, usually to 10. And then I repeat and then I go and I go. Or sometimes I have just like a lyric of a song that just comes up for whatever reason. And I just repeat it over and over. It's very meditative.
But it's not happening because you're doing it as a strategy to help you overcome. It's happening almost just like naturally.
Yeah,
like
it's happening
the ego is like kind of just like almost going haywire of like, give me something to do. I need like some sort of mind puzzle to solve.
Yeah, or everything like simplifies a lot in that moment. And I think that there's something almost, like I'm praying the rosary or doing a drop of meditation or it's like a mantra, right? And it gets you into this state where you're able to kind of move through or quiet the chatter of the ego, which is like, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. And suddenly all of these inner resources that you didn't know you had, like they come alive and they move through the body and you get to the top of that mountainside and you're like, wow, I didn't think I could do it. And so there's something really interesting that's happening in those moments where you're maybe, I don't know, like it's some sort of resource is being drawn upon. But for me, it's not just like a blankness of ego. I don't know. What do you think?
No, definitely not. I mean, there's an expansiveness that's happening And I mean, this is often true with like states of being that are really different or really novel.
Yeah.
Where there's kind of like a stretchy thing happening where it's like things are getting both longer while other things are getting shorter, or things are kind of feeling longer and shorter at the same time.
That was my labor.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, or, ever since the baby was born, there's kind of this experience of like time is moving really fast and slow at the same time. And I think all it really means is like this chapter of life is super novel compared to the last chapter of life. It's just so different that like your perceptions all feel kind of altered, almost like your phenomenology itself is kind of stretching or it's reorienting. And, when you're backpacking or if you're going through any sort of extreme physical activity, I mean, this was true for like cross-country racing for me when I was in high school and in college. There can be kind of like a feeling that like the world is both expanding, like it's starting to feel really big and almost like infinite, but it's also contracting where it's like, I feel like, my ego has like nothing to do and it's feeling kind of small and squished. So it's like you're both expanding and contracting at the same time. So, I mean, for backpacking, like what you're describing, I think is probably a common experience. I'm sure anyone who's listening who's been backpacking before might have some sort of like similar experience to relate it to, but
or like run marathons, done things like that.
Yeah. Or even just been on drugs, that can be kind of like the artificial way to get to these kind of states. But definitely like being on the trail and being deep into the trek and, your body's waking up and you're just kind of going like, dun, 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 another one bites the dust. And you're just like doing that for like literally like 2 hours straight. Like you're not even going to the chorus or anything. You're just going, another one bites the dust. And you just repeat it, another one bites the dust. And you're just like doing that. And you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, and it's like, I can't even get this song out of my head.
Actually, it's really interesting to then view the thing that came up in your head. And what does that maybe say about the moment? Or, what's the symbolism behind it? Sometimes it's not so symbolic. In one of our last backpacking trips, I kept repeating, the Rock Me Snakey lyric. I don't even know what that actual song is. It's because we saw Snake.
Rock Your Baby by George McRae, which is like kind of, sort of like an obscure like disco song.
Yeah, it's like from the 70s. Anyways, I saw a snake on the trail, and then later on, I started repeating that lyric, which is usually "Woman, take me in your arms, rock me, baby." But I changed it to.
But it's funny because snakes don't have arms. So, take me in your arms, rock me snakey. Right. It just like makes no sense. Inside joke. It's not supposed to be funny to the audience. It's funny to us.
It's an interesting example though of, and it was over and over and over. It became the mantra of that backpacking trek. And the difficulty, especially because with that one, we tried to marathon end it too early all the way back to the car. And it was like getting really hard. And it was just like constantly over and over, rock me, snake me. And so there's just something really interesting that's happening to the ego structure in those moments. And what does that say really about our natural orientations in everyday life, where we have the resources and we have ease and things have been made very simple and very straightforward for us. It's like we don't get pushed into those states of tension where the ego is challenged. We almost have to create those for ourselves now. And through that process, even though strange things might emerge, I have found time and time again by the end of the trek, even if it's been really hard, even if it's felt overwhelming or kind of dangerous at certain points, that I'm always like, I cannot wait to do this again. Like, this was incredible.
Yeah, the perspective's interesting. I mean, this is for another episode, but you have to wonder what kind of effect it's just having on sort of like the global consciousness that like fewer and fewer people over time are experiencing nature.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, statistically, it's hard to even say what that even means exactly. I mean, in some ways, there are more people going out to nature from the city than before. I think like sort of like Instagram culture has made like national park popularity like explode. So there's people who are coming from like the urban environment out into nature, maybe more so in the last like 20 years. But I think generally speaking, a general pattern of humanity, I think it's pretty hard to refute this, has gone from being probably pretty immersed in nature to being less immersed in nature over time. And definitely the internet and especially having your phone in your fucking pocket, like has
Yeah.
definitely had an effect of ripping your ego out of your body and into like abstraction space more
Yeah.
and more and more. So if everyone's kind of doing that continuously and it's becoming sort of like a mainstream thing to do, you have to wonder like what kind of effect is this having on humanity as a whole, just sort of like this disconnection from the wilderness.
Yeah.
And, you know, how important it is for people to disconnect and get back into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, to go back to Artemis, mythically, she is linked to the wilderness and several of the themes like the moon and childbirth and things like that. But her relationship to the wilderness is really different because she's not an archetypal great mother figure. She kind of encompasses the kind of the aspect of the wilderness that is more isolating and takes one away from community. She's a virgin goddess, so sort of like
Right.
a wholeness and completeness in herself without relationship to another, without having a child. But she's interestingly not just alone. She's alone in the sense of she doesn't live in the city. She's not there with groups of normal humans, but in the wilderness, she's always, depicted with her companions, wolves and stags and dogs and other animals and nymphs. So like beings of the wilderness. And it really makes me think about what does it feel like to be in the wilderness that both is isolating and at the same time you feel companioned by something else.
Yeah.
Something
The
deeper.
return home.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take this in so many directions. Something that stood out to me, I'm going to do this sequentially. I have a few thoughts here. Something that stood out to me is we've covered Princess Mononoke before.
Yeah, we did a live. I don't know if it's on this podcast.
I don't know. It's probably on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
Maybe, or maybe it's private. I can't remember. But the connection of Artemis to Princess Mononoke as a character was not something I thought about.
Yeah.
Although it seems kind of obvious now.
Yeah, I don't think we talked about that.
Because I think it was before the Artemisian was a project for you.
True, yes.
But it's like Princess Mononoke like lives with wolves, and like it's like if you were gonna say, oh, she's alone, it's like she's not alone. Right. She has all her animal companions. She even says, I'm an animal. I'm not human. I hate all humans. Right, and that's a little extreme, but it's kind of like an Artemisian thing going on there.
Yeah, for
right?
sure. Yeah.
She's like wearing white and sort of there's something kind of virginal about her.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think that there is something that we can tap into with the wilderness and the puer state, right? Which is sort of before union with another.
Yeah.
That can maybe always eternally be found in the wilderness.
Yeah.
By going there.
I mean, just talking about like good stories / myths to bring up about this theme. It's like Princess Mononoke is a great example.
Yeah,
it's like the whole movie is about man versus nature.
Absolutely. And this attempt at like dominion over nature and the drawing out of all of its resources and how the land becomes sick, but also how the land fights back.
Yeah.
Like Mother Nature or the great spirit of the forest, is more powerful than even man can realizes.
Yeah. And then you have like, the coming together, like the marriage and they don't get married, but there's sort of a male-female romance that is sort of hinted at in the movie that
or there's sort of like an introduction to humanity that Princess Mononoke didn't have because she was of the wild.
Yeah.
And such sort of a pure expression of that untamed, completely free principle. And I'll go back to my trek. Day 2, I had my injury that I mentioned. So I spent day 2 really just taking it easy, which was actually a really nice change because a lot of times when we go backpacking, it's hiking probably a minimum of 8 miles a day and just like going and not always stopping in the backcountry, in the wilderness, and just enjoying, experiencing, being present with it. And so I spent the whole day by the river, swimming, just kind of staring at the trees in the sun. I don't know. It was really interesting because I actually just did that for hours and hours, and I didn't have a book. I didn't have my phone, and I felt so nourished. I felt very present. And I think if I was like left to sit, on the street somewhere for hours and hours, I'd get really bored,
Yeah.
But I felt, like there was the spirit of the wind to talk to. And actually there was like a water snake that, went through the river, and there was a bear that kind of moved through the area at one point. And it was like the companions were there. I didn't feel alone, even though a lot of the time there was no one else around me.
I mean, it's a much more embodied form of stimulation, embodied form of entertainment. It's almost like if you were going to like put on the equivalent of a movie for your body instead of your mind, being out in nature is like that. It's just like, ooh, so many stimulations, so much novelty, so much information, basically, just like everywhere, like every sound, every creature, every little leaf, the way the water moves.
Yeah.
Most people, I shouldn't say most people, I think a lot of people will have trouble getting into that if they were to sit down just in the forest for an hour,
especially at first.
Yeah, they'd be like, "This is really boring." It's like, no, like ease into it, let the body wake up, and it's like, oh, it's actually like really beautiful and amazing out here, But mostly, like most of us need like a movie to watch about nature to make it like Princess Mononoke, like to like make it interesting. So it is kind of entertainment for the body in that way. The other points I was going to get back to, in addition to Princess Mononoke, it's like the return to companions in the wilderness is interesting. And I think angles come from that are that like, humans were born in the wilderness. They evolved in the wilderness. There's a reason they go into the wilderness. Kind of feels like returning home. That even though in some ways you might feel like you are leaving where all the people are, which are in the city, there is a return to like the home, like where I came from, the origin, is out in nature. And that's, I think, a lot of the experience of that, like that reverence and that beauty and that intensity is that feeling of like coming back to where I'm meant to be, which is like out in like this like beautiful, epic place where there's no straight lines and there's no blank walls. It's like, there's just like detail, 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 detail.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. But, there also ties in like daemons / like spirits of the wilderness, which has been something I think has been present in every like ancient culture. Is like every sort of ancient form of like mythology or religion has had some form of personified nature. Like a lot of the gods of the past, kind of, not all of them, but like a lot of the gods in the past are like nature gods.
Sure.
Some kind of personification of like the sea or the sky or the sun or the wind, whatever. A lot of Greek gods are just that. It goes beyond that to like personifying like human experience. It's like the god of like being drunk and stuff like that, but still like the nature spirits you can tap into that. I feel like if you go out into nature, it's like you can kind of feel like I'm communing with the spirits of the forest. Yeah. And there's something that feels like true about that because it kind of is true. It's like there actually is like a real spirit to the forest if you can allow yourself to experience it. And so that companionship, I think, is something that's really available to all of us if we go seek it out. And I don't think it's just like playing make-believe or it's like using your imagination to pretend the nature is alive. It's like it is fucking alive and it will talk to you. And there is sort of like that epic feeling of like, oh my God, like the sky father and like the earth mother and, the goddess of the river, like all these things, like it feels very real if you allow yourself to experience it as being real.
Yeah. Also, as I mentioned, we saw the snake in one of those previous trucks that we did, but anytime I meet an animal in the wild, it feels like such a gift. And it feels...
we highlight that.
Yeah.
We keep track of that.
Yeah.
Like which animal friend is going to visit us today? And we've actually experienced a lot of those. Have been like really interesting.
Yeah.
It's like random bobcats. Even in like the Bay Area.
Yeah, we saw dolphins at one time.
It's like, oh, there's fucking dolphins in the ocean right now. It's like they're coming to visit us. Like which animal spirit is going to bring us a message?
Yeah.
And we even do kind of divination with it, which is like, what does it mean? What does the dolphin mean?
Yeah. I think that's why it very powerfully activates, the archetypal layer of the psyche, which in and of itself is very healing or generative or has that way of reorienting balance or relativizing the ego. You kind of realize where you are in the grand scope of life and its mysteries. And I think anytime we can truly tap into that, it's it's meaningful, and we should. I think basically the whole aim of my work is to do that, and it makes me think that I should do one day retreats out in the wild, maybe not backpacking fully, but it's like, how do we mix?
You mean paid retreats?
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool? We were like doing retreats and like beautiful epic nature and also doing divination and like studying myths, but we were also embodied in it and immersed in it, and let's see what cool animal friends come.
I think that'd probably be really popular, honestly, if you did it well.
Okay. Keep an eye out for announcements eventually if it comes together. But so partly what I'm saying is I think you can do it at home. You can find little moments of it. You can go to your local beach. You can go to like your local, regional forest or something, or even at home. You can have like a part of it, an altar to it, practice the divination and, call upon the animal spirit. But I think you really feel it truly when, like Vasilisa, you leave the home and you enter into the forest and you begin to meet the Great Mother and the horsey friends and the spirit.
The horsey friends?
She meets those riders. They're horsemen.
Oh, you mean Vasilisa? Yeah, okay, talking about Vasilisa.
But also while I was
just talking about you and your experience.
It's actually while I was
go
backpacking.
Out there and meet the horsey friends.
There were
right. You did see some horses.
I did see some horses.
Yeah.
All the animals are my friends, so
for sure. Quick, and just quick little disclaimer / warning: like backpacking is dangerous. So
please prepare if you're gonna go.
Maybe this should have gone earlier in the episode, but if you are listening and you are interested in going out to nature and you haven't done it before, backpacking specifically is quite dangerous. It's not something that you should just sort of try on a whim. Even experienced people like me, I'm not mega experienced, but I'm fairly experienced. I definitely find myself getting into like situations that are not great sometimes because
something always goes wrong.
It kind of feels like something always kind of goes wrong. So it's like it requires a lot of planning, a lot of prep. You really need to know where you're going. You need to have good maps. You should go on like pretty established trails. A place like Yosemite is great because it's so popular that you're very unlikely to get lost or be not near someone.
Yeah. Trails are really established.
If you're interested in going backpacking or going out in nature in a serious way, definitely do a lot of research beforehand. ChatGPT can even help you with stuff like that nowadays. Just ask a lot of questions about how do I prep, what gear do I need, and better yet, find someone who maybe has more experience and go with them, et cetera, or go with a friend, and then you're less likely for things to go wrong or to get lost out there by yourself. Anyways, so be safe.
Yeah, great points, Aaron. Okay, so to go back to some of the mythic examples, I'm curious if you have any modern myths for us, movies, fictional stories of going into the wilderness that you can bring up.
Yeah, I mean, I think this part is always fun because there's always so many ways to tie any topic we're discussing to a lot of like pop culture and myths or myths from the past as well. But the Green Knight is one that we've covered before.
Okay, yeah.
I think there is a video on YouTube that you can find, or there might actually be a podcast episode even that was the Green Knight. I don't remember, but the Green Knight is a story of Gawain, right? Who was sort of in King Arthur's court.
Yeah.
But it's a very weird myth. Like a lot of myths are really weird, but he essentially has like an interaction with the Green Knight, which is sort of representative of nature.
Yeah.
And he has to actually go out onto this journey to
meet him and
redeem himself, sort of, because he's signed some contract with the Green Knight. And there's interactions with sort of that theme of him needing to get inoculated by nature. He's sort of in the mansion with that woman or something like that, and she gives him like a green belt. You don't know what I'm talking about. Alyssa's shaking her head like, I don't know this one very well. But
I don't remember the movie that well.
The movie, I think, was quite good. I think because it stuck so closely to the actual myth.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people who didn't know the myth beforehand saw it and were just like, what the fuck is this movie? This is so weird. It comes off as kind of like an art movie. I know Jack London and his work is like all about sort of the wild, like White Fang is about a wolf and exploring sort of like themes of nature. and he lived out in nature. I mean, he lived out like in a cabin when he was writing some of these books.
Yeah.
But there's a famous story he did is to build a fire, I think it was called. And if I got the title wrong, like, excuse me. But that's sort of exploring like a man trying to make it somewhere, and he's going out into nature and he's trying to build a fire, and he fails essentially, and nature kills him. Something like that. But
reminds me of that TV show Alone.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I mean, it's a great example of there's a lot of popular sort of reality shows,
survival reality shows
where the wilderness plays like a big role in the theme and entertainment. And so Alone is a show where people go out into the wilderness and they have to survive for as long as they can with only the gear that they brought with them.
Yeah, and these are usually highly competent, very skilled individuals who have been doing it for years and years and can go out and actually, what do you call it, bushcrafting?
Bushcrafting is part of it, where you actually build shelters and stuff just out of the stuff you have around you, trees and...
Yeah, forage your own food, collect your own water, and actually probably have to like boil it to make it clean.
I'm sure.
They're not using like purifiers or anything like that.
They might, but even if you have purifiers, it's still like a lot of work.
Yeah, but it shows really like the trials and tribulations of what it means to truly survive out in the wilderness, usually in very extreme environments. I think those shows are usually in Alaska or in parts of Canada or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, remote areas, even Survivor is a super popular show, and it's not really the same as like Alone, where like they're really out on their own. But still, a huge part of the appeal of the show is that they're out in the wilderness and there's nature.
They're stranded on an island and have to build their shelter.
Right, and it's uncomfortable, and there's bugs and sun, and even that, which is like a pretty safe form of being out in the wilderness, is like still extremely difficult. Like
and exhausting.
And they report it. I mean, if they go poop in the ocean and stuff like that, and like that does get sort of...
And they lose a ton of weight.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great experiment. If you want to experience how uncomfortable, like if you want to experience like the reality of nature, it's like just go poop outside. Like you can't do that in the city, but like if you actually try to go like poop in your yard basically, and you will if you even disregarding the kind of cleanup you have to do, but like just like squatting on the ground and pooping is just like really kind of uncomfortable, and you're just like, well, this kind of sucks, like and like that's really simple. It's like even going to the bathroom out in the wilderness, it's like this is like really uncomfortable. Like I wish I had like my own bathroom and my toilet I could just sit on.
Yeah. Well, it brings to mind too, like the ease of getting food in supermarkets and things like that. Here's your meat that's already butchered and cleaned up and ready to go, or the vegetables that you didn't have to grow. Yeah. All of these things.
I mean, and then maybe that's a better example. Just like if you want to experience nature, like just walk out into the forest and try and feed yourself.
Yeah, and then actually you might actually make yourself sick.
There's nothing to eat actually. Or it's like, oh, I'm gonna like eat this mushroom, and like now I'm dead.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just the miracle of food and water and shelter is something that you can definitely give yourself perspective on if you just like try and go out into nature.
Yeah, and I think that's where the appreciation piece comes in. Like when I come back home from these kind of trips, I don't doubt for a moment how important and what a privilege it is to have a safe roof over my head, to have a refrigerator, to have clean running water, to be able to turn on my stove and like instantly have fire. These are all things that you have to work for when you're out in the wild.
The Revenant's a great movie.
Oh.
That's one that came out recently. It's definitely a survival man versus wild movie.
Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah.
Lord of the Rings has a lot of nature theme for sure. I mean, even just the backdrop of Lord of the Rings, like the environment is out in the woods. It's like that's like what the Fellowship is doing. They're traveling through the wilderness, and man versus wild is like really a huge theme of Lord of the Rings. Like not exactly. It's more kind of like the good versus the bad. But the archetypal hero of the whole story, I would say, like the masculine one at least is Aragorn, and he's like the master of the wilderness. He's the ranger,
but not master in a way of domination.
No, not domination.
Yeah, he's in a relationship with it. And so he's more of a like integrated versus like the king who lives in the castle, always away, from wilderness with his high castle walls and food that's prepared for him, even though he kind of gets to that point at the end, like he ascends to be the true king of Gondor. Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah. But if you're talking about like domination of nature, it's like the orcs and the goblins are like hacking down the
Yeah,
trees
right. Yeah.
in
Tearing
Isengard.
down. Yeah.
And that's like sort of like domination of nature. And then,
Yeah.
they have like the themes playing out with like the ents of the forest,
Yeah,
where it's like
fighting back.
you have nature actually personified into like humanoid
Trees.
tree creatures. And then they go and see that their brethren have all been chopped down. And then you actually have the trees like fighting back, nature fighting back against, the spread of mechanized civilization almost.
Yeah.
So it's clearly just a huge omnipresent theme, I think, in a lot of our stories, as it is in our lives.
Yeah.
It's like nature is always there,
Yeah.
even if we've forgotten about it. It is something that's extremely powerful. It is what gives rise to our entire existence.
Yeah.
Even if we're not living in the trees, I didn't mean like in the trees like monkeys. Even if we're not living in the woods, what I meant to say, all your water comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
All your food comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
Everything is still, all of our resources are still being cultivated from nature, from its cycles. There's no escaping that. It's like, I think we tend to be like, oh, like humans are so fucking smart and our technology is so good that we've sort of just transcended nature. And it's like, no, like we still live off it completely.
Yeah.
You just have those tubes that are running into those resources and sucking them out of the land, or just sort of like bringing them to you from far away. And so you can kind
we're
of
disconnected from it.
Yeah, so you can kind of pretend that like it's not even happening, but still like Mother Nature definitely holds us like in her arms. We're still like in her cradle, and it's important that we
and at her mercy.
And at her mercy. Yeah. Natural disasters
absolutely
are like a big thing that, climate change, obviously, like people are very conscious of climate change.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because people are conscious of climate change without really being connected to nature.
Yeah.
But maybe that's something that's changing.
Perhaps.
Return to nature.
Yeah. One thing that came up is how in the tarot, in the major arcana, which offer the most sort of archetypally concentrated cards and themes in the deck, if you move at least sequentially, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, the Empress, card number 3, comes before the Emperor, card number 4. And the Empress as that archetype of the Great Mother, or of Mother Nature, of abundance and generativity and resources and connection and that which we are born from. She comes first, right? Before we move into the Emperor, which is order and structure, and we could say like city life and the laws that we build, and the protection that we have, and everything that's kind of born out of some sort of civilized industrial culture. And yet,
the masculine sort of blade, like slicing and dicing up nature in order to sort of reconstruct it into machines.
Yeah. Or to sort of, separate itself from the wilderness, that came beforehand.
Boundaries.
Sure, the boundaries of
it. The wall around the city, it's a boundary away from nature.
Yeah, which gives you, like the sword, it's double-edged, it's protective, but it's also protective and disconnective at the same time. And I think that at least here in the West, or maybe here in America, in big urban cities, I think we're feeling the effects of the disconnection, and those moments of going back feel, as we've been saying over and over, like coming home.
I mean, it's interesting, like just this sort of theme has been playing out since the 60s, right?
What do you mean?
It's like the hippies, like, let's go, like, live in communes.
Oh,
like,
I see. Yeah.
Like, it's, the sort of like reconnecting to nature and sort of conservationism.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Protecting Mother Earth, stuff like that is, I mean, obviously it predates that. Absolutely. It's sort of like the theme of like protecting the earth is very, very old, and definitely probably in other more ancient or primitive cultures, it's a more present thing than it is in the West, which I think has been a lot about like dominating nature.
Yeah. Well,
mastering nature.
Yeah. Perhaps we could see it as a kind of cultural compensation after a period of great growth and industrialization, that there are these movements that crop up, or almost like an enantiodromia, like the tendency for something to become its opposite.
Yeah.
Where we're like, highly focused on the separation from nature and the creating of technologies that allow us to, control it and dominate it and place it into the kind of resources we want and things like that. And then we have this total movement towards, I don't know, we're millennials, but I think there's like a huge movement in people our age who are leaving the city, homesteading, living off grid, wanting to grow their own food, things like that, where we're kind of moving out from the shadow maybe of the hyper industrial period.
Yeah, I mean, with the shadow, a lot of it is just sort of strange romanticisms and wacky ideas that probably won't work necessarily as well as people think they will.
It's like somewhere in the middle that's actually like what the golden mean, right?
Right. There's like the thesis of sort of the mechanized like city, and then sort of the antithesis of like returning to nature, and a lot of the like the communes that people tried to build in the 60s and 70s failed miserably, and it's not quite as glorious as people like think it is. Of just like, let's go live off the land, and then it's like, wow, we're starving to death. It's, it's like, oh, okay, maybe the city is actually a good place to be. But regardless of the logistics of returning to nature or the practicalities of returning to nature, it's like clearly, I think, on people's minds in a way that's healthy at the very least.
Yeah.
That, like, culturally, I think people do think this is important. Like, conservation is important, and people only need to go visit national parks to say, like, you know what, this is really awesome. This should be protected. Like, I don't think this area would be improved if it was like if you had like a Walmart here, where people were just building houses all over these mountains, and you had a theme park inside Yosemite Valley or something like that. It's like, that's not an improvement. Most people recognize that. So I think this is a huge another conversation, but it'll be interesting to see as we move into the future, like what kind of relationship humans continue to develop with nature, and whether or not they successfully get into a sort of balanced, right relationship with nature, and whether or not individuals sink further and further into like the computer, and never leaving their houses, and never really even going outside, or if it's the opposite, which is more utopian, which is like people actually like realize the importance of this, and they try to find ways to really sort of have nature be a bigger part of their lives. And do you have the kind of cyberpunk future where everything is like sort of trashed and apocalyptic, or do you have kind of like the solar punk future where everything is sort of beautiful and in balance, and there's a lot of harmony, and people still live like with their machines and with all their conveniences, but they're also, in reverence to Mother Nature, and they're trying to protect it. And we probably won't live long enough to see all that really play out, is my guess.
I think it's a question that you and I are constantly mulling over for ourselves. Maybe not to that intensity or that extreme, but
there's a microcosm playing out between us.
Yeah. Do we want to be in the city, or do we want to be in the countryside? Do we want to be closer to where our community is and to the ease of resources, or do we want the access to the wilderness that we would get if we decided to move away?
We want both.
Yeah.
Right? But it's hard to find both. There's definitely a balance to be struck. I'm sure there are people who have a pretty good balance of living someplace where they're really close to nature and still having all the resources. And there's cities like Boulder, Colorado. I mean,
or
Sedona. If anyone who's been there is just kind of like, oh, there's a lot of really amazing epic nature right here. And there's also all the resources I needed right here. But this is probably a little, tension that's playing out inside of you right now as you're listening. It's like, it's not just like the world. It's not just, our nation. It's not just even your family. It's internally. There's the tension between the conscious and the unconscious, and, the city and the wild. And, hopefully this episode has stirred up some of those juices a bit and given some food for thought.
Yeah. An invitation to consider it.
An invitation.
Yeah. Or to, make that trip to somewhere where you find a little bit of that and notice what arises in its place, and use that as a jumping off point to explore the wild within and without.
Go outside.
If you're interested in reading my writing or attending workshops on inner work, archetypal studies, and Jungian psychology, check out theartemisian.com.
If you want to follow my writing, go to arnrogerson.substack.com.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.